Hi, guys. Welcome to the Lit Mag Lab podcast. This is Vevna Forrow. Yeah, let's get started. Okay, guys. So previously on the podcast, I was discussing success and, the various factors that sort of determine that in the Lit Mag or journal community, even with indie presses, publishing houses. We are, again, as I mentioned this on the podcast multiple times, we are surrounded by numbers. And, following counts, subscriber totals, mailing list, how many are on your mailing list, and monthly site traffic, visitors. And, same thing applies to like music artists, right? They have that monthly listener tracking on Spotify, right? And we see that number, and how artists, we see, sometimes I see social media posts, artists are like really bummed out that their monthly listener amount just like was totally gone down, and they focus so much on the numbers and the views on their reels and their music and the streams and everything, and it can really eat away at someone. Same thing, lit mags and journals, right? We have, if issues aren't selling or doing well, or barely any contributors are buying them, or no one's really reading them, it can be hard, because you need that to keep things going, right? To do the next publication and the ones after. So, you do have to pay attention, unfortunately, again, to numbers, right? Expenses, the cost, is there, I know, a lot of lit mags and journals say they break even, or they are barely, going into a profitable region to pay staff and writers and other things. There are so many expenses, to create the publication you want, and they have in mind, but there's only so much you can do with the money that you have, right? And for some founding editors, and, I'll just add this before we dive into, this topic I mentioned on the past episode. So, some founding editors, they may have disabilities, they may have, things come up in terms of their health that they're dealing with on top of that. And that's just a lot of pressure, right? It can cause stress, and numbers give stress. So, for everyone in the world, we're surrounded with, again, numbers at work and at home, we all have, bills to pay. We all have, that especially, everyone's family, and it's hard, not easy to do all the number crunching. It's not fun, as I mentioned before. But yeah, so I would say again, don't let numbers overwhelm you. It's so important to grow organically. From time to time, we see, others just stop, right, or cease their publication, and sometimes it's based solely upon the finances aren't there, the issue sales aren't enough to cover things, or there wasn't enough donations or support for the year, and they have to put pause on things, right? And that pause, right, is a hiatus, right? I mentioned this on the past podcast episode. I know I said I wasn't going to do an episode on this, but I just want to take a little bit of time to cover that, okay? So, I mentioned Dippity Lit Mag was on a break. It wasn't really like a break. I mean, we had a break on our print issue series, and then I still, continued doing online publications. Our reading team was, doing the selection of those, voting and scoring on those, giving internal feedback. And then I would go through the ones that made it to the final round, right? And do online publications. We're doing some podcast episodes. So we weren't like fully closed or anything like that. It was like a break just on print is what I meant at the time, and moving to our new submission system. So yeah, I thought that was a good idea, because like we're migrating off. We don't want to like keep intaking things when we're trying to move to a new submission management system. So yeah, hiatus, right? So the definition of that, right? I'm just going to read the definition for you from the dictionary, right? It's a pause or gap in a sequence, series, or process, right? And so it can refer to a temporary pause, or, something, missing, or things like that, right? TV series go on hiatus, things like that. They're examples, but yeah, I'm just sharing that with you. So yeah, a hiatus does not necessarily, does a hiatus mean the end, right? That's the question I put up there. But it doesn't always mean that a lit mag or journal is going to become defunct, or, just be ripped from existence. No, or stop publishing issues. Some places, take a longer than a year break. Some take several years and then they come back, or some take just a couple months off. It could be for a full season, a summer, all fall or winter, and it's tough. Some lit magazine journals have to keep up and running constantly, because if they don't have incoming submissions year round, right, or the next month, they can't continue the series. So breaks, hiatus, are expensive, if it's not going to be continued, at a later point. Sometimes breaks are used for, establishing funds or raising money for, the publication to continue. So I'll give an example. I was interested in submitting to Lit Shark at one point in time. I just am a huge fan of shark movies. My dad and I have always been a fan of like shark movies, alligator and crocodile movies. It was just a thing, growing up, and even now, we watch them whenever we see a shark flick, or as long as it's not overly saturated with CGI, right? It has like some realism to it, like I think Sharknado, we never really watched that, the flying shark ones. And I think that's just too unrealistic. So, Open Water, a huge fan of that series, the Open Water, the first three, and, 47 Meters Down, and a couple other ones out there. Deep Blue, the Deep Blue Sea one from 1999, and I think Open Water 2 Adrift was really sad. Open Water Adrift 2, it came before that other one. There was another adaptation of it, or other ones that came after, the first three Open Waters, and I didn't really like those. I think there was one in 2017, but I saw all of them, and Open Water 2 Adrift and Open Water 3 Cage Dive. I've seen those quite a few times, and some other, crocodile and alligator ones like Black Water and Rogue, and I don't know what it is about those movies. I always just really watch them. It could be that I watched a lot of those movies when I was younger, so I have childhood memories attached to them, watching with my dad and things like that. But I always really liked watching shark flicks and stuff. So the last one I saw, guys, just sharing, because I share things, I always talk about movies on all the podcasts I do, so that's just something I do. So I think it was the Last Breath, there's another Lost Breath out there, but it's a 2024 shark one. 2024, The Last Breath. There's another Last Breath movie that's coming out, or it may already come out, I think, in 2025, but it's different, I think. So I haven't seen that one. I'm talking about The Last Breath 2024. So that one wasn't too bad. Had, some really dark scenes again and things like that. But yeah, I've always really loved watching those movies. I grew up watching Jaws and stuff like that. Anyways, I was really bummed out to hear about Lit Shark's hiatus. I don't know if they're coming back. They could be coming back or not. They said the rest of 2025. I think it was Mackenzie. I don't remember the last name. I apologize, but I think they had a really, really cool vibe. The shark vibe, and I'm really saddened to hear that, but I do hope they come back. It's totally understandable. I was reading the letter that, a lot of editors post letters about hiatus, breaks, and things like that. I always read them because, it's good to stay informed in the community, others, fellow founding editors, what's going on, and stay in the loop and things. Lit Mag News, that, again, Becky runs, is very informative, what's happening in the Lit Mag space, others' comments, reading through that. It's important to stay updated on what's happening to the Lit Mag community, because it's very important. CLMP also does a really stellar job, if you're part of the CLMP membership, to keep in the loop on things, So I think back to Lit Shark's letter about the hiatus. So I think they said the rest of 2025. So it's totally important. I was reading, I think, it was in regards to taking a break, and focusing on healing and health. And I think it's so important to recognize to take breaks, even if, let's say you're not running a Lit Mag journal, even if you have a work from home job or you're working, right? If you don't take breaks, you're going to get burnout. You're going to be really down on energy. You're going to be really upset and just going to feel cruddy, right? It's important to, take breaks and come back to things. I think, just an example, I come from a technical support background, and I remember I had days where I was just, working a lot of overtime when I started out, and I was working late and late. Even I was bringing work, helping others, back home. I would remote in, see a ticket come in from, an employee based in China or France, or, an employee doing an overnight shift, and I would restart something. I would look at it. I would try and help them the best I can, and take notes and resolve it as soon as possible. But, I wasn't, it was very tough, doing that. And I did it because I really wanted to help others, and I really was passionate about fixing things and getting our ticket queue down and things like that. But it was very stressful, I'm, a very chill person. I'm a creative person, right? And I think it's hard, when you, come from, you have, you're creative, but you also like, troubleshooting things and fixing things. And, it can be stressful, especially, if you have, let's say, you have a stressful job, and you're coming back and home and things are stressful there, right? It's a lot of stress on top of that. Everyone has bills, everyone has, I was also doing school at the time, right? And finishing my college classes. I was working full time. And, I transitioned from an internship when I started into a full-time role. And I was still working full-time when I moved to another company, and I was finishing my college classes. So I was really juggling that, doing homework and that. So it was hard to find a break in there, breaks and things like that. I think the only times I ever took breaks was when I got really sick, came down with a cold or something, or nearly flu and other things like that, or just felt really awful, and sometimes you just need breaks, right? We're only human, we our bodies break down, things break down, we aren't invincible. So it's important to take breaks. And I think if you have a volunteer staff, if you have backup support, if you have others, fill those gaps when you need to take a break, I think it's much easier for you, right? We don't really have anyone else doing a lot of things at Dippity besides a reading team and editing and proofreading. So a lot of the visual designs and, getting the artwork facilitated with collaborating with fellow artists, and that is on me. I manage our accounts and all of that. I'm wearing multiple hats, so I don't necessarily have someone yet to do those things or do backup roles and stuff, but I was thinking about it, finding someone who may be interested in learning how to do visuals that I do, or has a creative knack for that, or is interested to produce those, or to do digital collages and stuff. But I'm not sure yet. We'll see. Anyways, in any case, a hiatus is not the end of a Lit Maker journal, no, by any means. Sometimes we see that and we're like, oh, the place is about to go underwater. Our work is toast, the site's going to be dropped off, the plug's getting pulled, and now we have to, see if we can grab a print issue and things like that. There are like sites that go through like an archival state, or, there's tools for that, like Wayback Machines. I'm not sure how all that works. I was reading about it the other day. I just wonder about that. But anyway, it was something I was looking up the other day, just researching, because I know some sites have an archival process where they have a snapshot of a site, of all the pages, and then it you can do an archival state of it. It's interesting. Anyway, I was just sharing. But yeah, so I was really sad to see that, but I hope Lit Shark comes back. Another place that had a hiatus, I think, was, back in January and February, was Literary Mama. And I'm not a mom, but it was a place I'd recommended to some moms, back when I was starting poetry again, and others asked me, hey, do you know places I can submit? And I was like, I knew they were a mom, and I was like, yeah, check out Literary Mama. So, it's a very cool publication. Of course, I'm not a mom, but I think it's really awesome what they do. So they were on a hiatus. I think they're back. I could be wrong. I'm not sure. I just read it was for January, February. And then they mentioned, I think something I jotted down was money is tension, is a quote from them. So yeah, money causes a lot of tension, right? I said that, in other ways on this podcast. So, I don't like, that's why, if you missed the past podcast episode, I mentioned Dippity Lit Mag has discontinued reading fees, right? I think that submission reading fee causes stress and tension on writers, right? It makes them feel a lot of pressure that they have to get, it of course, it makes them read guidelines, be more careful, right? But I think it adds that a lot of stress, right? And things like that. And sometimes, writers take breaks from lit mags that have reading fees, right? Because there's so many fees, right? Those add up. So I think it's best to go fee-free. We can't do that dippity press, but yeah. I think, again, breaks in things you're doing, it's important to pause and do other things. But I know some editors, that this is all they do. It's a full-time work for them, salary and stuff. A lot of lit mags and journals, right? They invest a lot of hours into their journal or magazine series, but they're not paid. So it's not, in my fam, they don't consider dippy work or anything like that, right? So they just see it as something, as a minor hobby, as something on the side that it's not really going anywhere. So I don't know, it's hard. Sometimes my fam is supportive, says supportive things, and then sometimes they say some stuff that doesn't make sense. So it's hard. We all get feedback from our fam, on things we do or things we start. And it's tough, you do the best you can, you dig deep, and you try to make things successful, right? You try to have a publication that is presentable, that, looks good and others can enjoy, because that's the whole purpose of it, right? Sharing others' work and writers, getting them out there and supporting them. It's not about the editor. It's not about them, and I don't feel good. I always felt, again, really cruddy about fees and stuff. So I don't like paying them either. So why should I, it's just that whole thing. Right. And so, yeah. So anyways, breaks, hiatus, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't necessarily mean that the magazine's defunct, but there are absolutely some really stellar magazines, both online, print, or online only, that have gone, closed their doors every year. As I'm speaking right now, a lit mag or journal may be closing its doors, it happens every year. A bunch of them go offline or stop rolling out issues and series. Some of them, we never know the reason why, and some of them, publicly say, clearly why they are no longer continuing. Oftentimes, again, as I mentioned in episode number 1, numero uno, right, it is down to financial funding or life events, right, one or the other. And yeah, so you can listen back to that. But yeah, I think, it can be stressful. Again, burnout is common. A lot of founding editors, shut their doors or, have maybe career path changes or other things they want to do. But I think it's totally possible to take a step back and to, if you have a volunteer staff in place, if you have others really passionate about it or want to be involved with it long term, I think that's really great. And you can establish a team around that. If you have a paid team, a paid staff, and everything's financially solid, I think you can, lock in the longevity of a lit mag or journal, right? Whether it be nonprofit or not, if you have, that continuous, a good structure, support-wise, issues and scheduling and everything really tight-knit, you can run a long-term successful publication. Some places have been around 10, 20 plus years, and they've done a really good job of keeping on top of everything, funding, issue releases, promoting writers, all of that. They have a dedicated team to do that. I know some places have, just a couple people, like we do and that, but a lot of it's still on the founding editor's shoulders, like myself, to keep things going, to roll out issues, to communicate, to do, the newsletters and all of that, social media, some do it all. And, yeah. So anyways, I think on Chill Subs, if you go out to some places that haven't published or have mentioned hiatus, they are listed as possibly defunct. But that doesn't necessarily mean they have closed their doors. So, I feel like that maybe should change to another term or hiatus, or maybe, until it's like official, until the sites close or no longer accessible or things like that. But anyways, there are some lit mags and journals, I submitted to in the past. I think one, kindergarten mag, I had an acceptance, with them. They closed down, and, I think it was run by a group of friends. That one was, based out of here in Nevada too. Online, I was really sad to hear that, but they were really awesome, and they had a very cool vibe. I think now when you go to sites, so it's interesting, when you go to some sites, lit mags and journals, after a while, their domain gets picked up, by another place. I went to a kindergarten mag, clicked on my poem link, right? And of course, the site's non-existent, but I was surprised to see it was like leading to the slot machine thing or some coin-operated thing. It was so bizarre. So I think somebody snagged the domain and did something with it. I don't know what that really entails. So just important there, make sure you lock in your domain, if you're on a break, to make sure, nothing weird happens there. But yeah, kindergarten mag closed, and I'm sad to hear that. But there are a couple other lit mags and journals I'm aware of in Nevada. But maybe I'll do, again, I want to do individual spotlight episodes, so I'm not really talking on specific names a whole bunch right now. But we'll eventually get there once I cover the main questions I want to for the, this foundation series of audio I'm doing. So who knows, I may start sharing my screen and stuff, and start, sharing some things with you guys, some more maybe video episodes or something. But we'll see. I will try to do some sort of screen share at some point in time, because I think it's hard just listening to audio all the time, right? So yeah, again, you can read some articles out on the Substack I have for this, and a hiatus isn't the end. It's not the end. It can sound like, it can feel like, when we hear that, it feels like an earthquake, right? We feel like that the lit mag journals on shaky ground, or, things like that. It can feel like a flag, like, oh, this place is about to, go out. But no, it's not necessarily always. I've seen a lot of places come back after a break, and then they restructure things. Now, sometimes when places restructure things, right, a lot of things change. So there are lit mags and journals that, ended up reintroducing fees or never before have, and they're nearly $20 or maybe a couple bucks, but still it's kind of, it takes you back, it's like, why are there fees now? Why weren't there fees before? It's hard. And same thing like with Dippity, right? We started, with a first time submissions free, that structure, and then changed that a little bit, and now we're fee free. So we couldn't do that at the time. We didn't have our Dippity Press series. We didn't have, other things at the time. When I started Dippity, I didn't have like a merch shop right away or anything like that. I slowly, added that in. I switched systems a couple times, for some things. I was figuring out which services to use, and trying to juggle that. But once you develop the series, your lit mag or journal series, or, work things out, you see how much things cost, and you can, get the gist of like what your a monthly budget is, or how much things cost to keep at least the website up and running, your submission system, and a typical issue. And if you're going to get ISBNs, so it can be costly as well. It's not always necessary to get an ISBN for all publications, but I think if you're intending to, have, reviews on the publication, if you're intending to have it, in distribution through the Ingram network, an ISBN is necessary, or even get it shelved. We have, a mixture at Dippity. Some versions of the publication, don't have an ISBN, and some do. So that is purposely because, we have a shops, where it's listed, where we do, international shipping, and then backup shops. Because let's say one place closes, right, then others can order it at the other place, right? So it's just a backup, right, so that others can get it. And then a digital version is always a good idea. Of course, the formatting sometimes changes a little bit with Kindle books and ebooks, right? But do the best you can. I think it's still cool to have a digital version of it. Multiple formats is always a good idea rather than just one format. Because if something tanks or goes down, then your whole series, right, is going to go down with that platform, right? So it's always a good idea to have, it up in multiple locations, in many places possible, both digitally and in print. So yeah, we'll see if the relaunch. I'm hoping to get into more digital subscription spaces. A lot of places, had told me again, our series wasn't popular in their eyes. We managed to get into one space, which, was good news, because that means, we can possibly get into others. With this relaunch, we'll see if it changes that, but I'll let you guys know. Anyways, so breaks aren't the end. It's important to take breaks. Don't feel, if you're a founding editor listening to this, or someone starting a lit mag journal, don't feel, ashamed about needing to take a break, or that, you need to come back to things, or that things, you need to restructure things for financial purposes. But I feel like don't, put it in writers' faces that they need to cough up $30 or $20 or, wicked crazy amounts. If it's not a contest or a chapbook series, in just a general submission, I think that's a bit off-putting, so we really have to think things out, right? I know some lit mags and journals, and I bumped my mic there. So some lit mags and journals, they have a time, where they wait and establish funding, then they start again, right? And they wait, establish funding, start again. So they do rounds and rounds of funding, and things like that. So yeah, it's a good idea to have a Patreon or something, or a coffee page, or, buy me a pizza, whatever, buy a tea. We should have buy me a tea, right? I feel like that should be a thing. Is that a thing? I don't know. I know you can change the whole coffee thing to a pizza icon and stuff, but, we've moved off of that, and I switched over to, the one that looks like Wi-Fi, right? It's coffee, but Ko-fi, Ko-fi, coffee, right? I don't know, guys. They all sound similar to me. There's so many sounding similar name stuff, but yeah. Anyways, check out our coffee links or support pages too if you want to support this or anything. Appreciate it in advance. So I just wanted to cover hiatus, breaks a little bit, give some examples on reasons why. I think with Literary Mama, I didn't mention this, but I think they had mentioned life changes and financial support and other stuff. I'm not sure. I could be wrong, but it was a while back that I read that. Anyways, if you do a Google search and just type literary magazine, hiatus, or break, you'll come across posts from past founding editors, some still up, about why they closed their doors, or why they needed to take a break or pause things, or, things like that. And it's totally okay. Again, we are only human, and we need breaks and pauses from things. Of course, you want to keep things running year round. I think it's a good idea to have a team or backup staff who can fill your shoes when you're gone or away, or you need to take a step back. Because it can be hard if you're doing everything yourself 24/7. It's possible. I've done as much as possible, and the goal is for me eventually to give more tasks to the reading team and transition out in roles eventually giving more tasks off to a staff. I think that's what my goal is to do, in hopes of balancing things out a little bit more. We'll see. I don't know, about, I originally said I was going to get a podcast manager, someone to manage the podcast shows and stuff, but, that didn't really end up happening. They never stepped in to really do that. I've had cases where volunteers, were like, I'm interested, but, they never hopped in after, several months, and mainly, I totally understand, they're starting new jobs, they move to a new place, and, they can't, continue or go into the role, or they have school and work, so it's understandable. But some volunteers have totally just dropped off, and we never heard back from them. It happens. So that'll happen if you ever run a staff. Some never tell you or get back to you on that. And anyways, I just want to say thank you to any volunteer we ever had, or at least tried to jump in. I understand about life events, so I don't hold it against anyone if they just vanished and never told me. It's hard. But, if you invest in training someone or getting them involved in the publication, typically we want someone, to be long-term, it's hard to, it takes time for a reader to get the hang of what is acceptable in a publication. Every publication is a little bit different, what they're looking for. So it's hard when you constantly are rotating out volunteers every couple of months, right? You want, consistency there, a year at least or more. It's bound to happen. No one's a paid volunteer or anything like that, or on our staff at least. But, if someone's paid, right, even if you're paid for your work or paid as a volunteer staff, right, when others hear that, they have, something to there, that is, it's a good feeling when you get paid for your work, right, or the work you're doing, right. So it motivates others, right, to submit to that place. I want to win this contest award. I want to get paid for my work. Not having that, it's just the getting published is an accomplishment itself, but getting paid for your work, it's a added bonus, right? But anyways, I just want to say thanks again to anyone who's listening to this. Thanks again to any volunteers. It's not easy volunteering. It's not easy running a publication, especially, if you're not salaried through it or anything like that, and you're running on, a lot of lit magazine journals, some of them are held together, by duct tape. Not literally, of course, but, metaphorically, right? They're holding things together very tightly, and it's hard, there are a lot of lit magazine journals who sometimes get behind financially, and it's really hard. It can sink the publication, and it mean it's hard for some journals to scrape together a couple $100. Sometimes I've seen lit magazine journals say, hey, we're short about $100, can you guys all pitch in? I've seen things like that, and others in the community have totally done that, and I think that's awesome, that others rallied together so they could get the series printed out. I think that's cool. So it comes down to community being a very important aspect of a lot of lit magazine journals, and helping it continue on over the years, and getting behind the mission of it. And you really have to invest a lot of energy into anything you do. Obviously, if you want to see it continue in the future, you want to see it prosper and do well, because you want to see those publications stay up there. You want to see them maybe be placed in print, or do more series with the work that's being published. Supporting writers further, there's so many cool ways, again, thanks to technology, that we can do that. And so I hope this episode helped you. I know I traveled off topic talking about my fave movies and like some other things, and and work-life balance is important. I don't think I did a good job of that, looking back at, when I started working and stuff, and I was just so in tune to, solve tickets, do this, fix this, go do my assignments, go back to work, go back to, I didn't really have like a good, offset work-life balance. And where I was specifically lived, I didn't really have a lot of really close friends still there, or stayed in contact or in touch with me. So a lot of my energy was invested into work and school, and I had acquaintances at work and stuff like that, and some maintained as friends, but long distance. So it's tough. I think it's important to recognize that breaks are needed, and in the community, a lot of us do become friends, and support one another, and it's not like you don't feel alone, right? When you're part of a community, the lit mag world, or writers supporting writers and artists supporting artists. I think that's really nice to see that others are like that and have that mindset. Someone had posted something the other day that was fluctuating in Substack, right? I am not in competition with anyone. I want everyone to do well, right? I don't know who said that. I apologize. I don't remember. That's a quote. That's not my quote, or I don't own that quote. But whoever said that, I think you've heard that before too. But we just want to see others do well. We all want to, do good things in the world, and do positive things and create more light in the world. There's so much negative stuff happening, so much, really sad stuff happening can really, affect you. And I think, by focusing on your writing, by focusing on things you love, whether it be art or whatever, you're, what others may see as a hobby may be something you want to turn into a full-time thing, and others may not understand, or what others may not see your passion as being anything but just something on the side. It's hard, you have to do other things to get, financial funding. Sometimes do other jobs or projects or things like that to grow something, and that's understandable. So, it's not going to be instantaneous success. You're not going to get that. We hear about places going viral or suddenly gaining traction, but it's not like that. It's a lot of, many say grinding and working, and, gradual growth, right? Organically is important. I think, there's so much, happening in the world right now, and lit magazine journals and books and all of that. They're so important. I think they ground us to, it could be seen as, when I was reading growing up, I'll share with you guys, it was a form of escape. I remember one time I was like, in my room back in Minnesota, I was just like so tuned into a book. I finished it in like 2-3 days or something. I was just like so cooped up in my room. I wanted to finish the book series. I bought, a bunch of them. I was like, and then I realized I didn't have like the last book of the series, and it came out, and I was like, I gotta get it. so it can be a form of escape. We get so drawn into a world of like reading and characters, but same thing I know some poets or writers, they read a poetry book and they're so, and not all poetry books are super thick. Sometimes we read through them fairly quick, but some get so involved into poetry books, they have stacks and stacks, and every poet, I guess, has their own world, or essentially, and a certain vibe to their work, right, or certain messages and things like that. And we get drawn into that. Lit mags and journals, same thing. It can be a space where you are drawn into it. Once you enter a space like a community or a lit mag world, you become very you're attached to it, right? And you feel very strongly about it, so you want to find good places for your work, right? You want to find homes for your work that are obviously, going to stay long term or look like they're doing a good job, right? Or keeping up the best they can. Things happen unexpectedly. No one can predict the future. So if a place goes underwater suddenly because of life event, that happens. But the best you can do is support lit mags and journals and to do the best you can. If it's hard, when places go underwater, when places pause, or and when we lose our favorite TV series and that just takes a break or is discontinued, it breaks our heart. Same thing with lit mags and journals, as I mentioned, so it happens, 20, 30, 40 years from now, a lot of the lit mags journals we know today, will probably, close their doors if they don't have stable funding, it's hard, it's sad to say, but yeah, same thing with bookstores. I just heard the other day a bookstore, I think in Berkeley, got shut down. Same thing, if a lot of bookstores are getting shut down, things get shut down every year, not just, online or physical stores and things like that, because of, it could be funding or financial issues or, not enough visitors or traffic, right, and things like that. Or sometimes, places are built on top of their, or communities are restructured and they, sometimes they wipe out a place for a mall or whatever, I don't know. I don't know why that place specifically closed down. But anyways, it's hard, when our favorite places get shut down. That's what I'm saying, ultimately. But yeah, breaks, don't feel bad if you need to say, I need to take a break. Or if you want, to keep things going again, you can establish a volunteer staff. That's, a good way to keep things going while you take a step back, or find someone else, a very trusted friend or loved one, to keep things going, if you want to. And yeah, I mean, sometimes, you hand off, let's say you hand off a publication to someone else, right? And they don't want to keep it going. And you have to, others have life events and things like that. So you have to respect that, it's their decision. But you do the best you can, to keep things going, to keep things up and running. Oftentimes, again, it comes down to finances, just like money, right? Money is like, so I don't know. I don't want to curse a bunch on this podcast. I try to refrain from cursing, but just know that, they were curse words, when we see bills, right, we get like, oh gosh, a bunch of curse words there, right? But yeah, I'm trying to refrain from doing that. But yeah, anyways, yeah, so I just wanted to share some examples. There are other lit magazine journals this year that went on hiatus and breaks, or that ceased publications that I'm aware of. If you want to stay in the loop on that, highly recommend you subscribe to Lit Mag News. They really stay on top of that. Becky does, and that publication and running it. There are other ones out there, poets who discuss lit mags and journals. You can find them not just on Substack. There are other ones that come across like blogs and some other spaces. But yeah. So that's all I wanted to share. I know I got, again, off topic and trailed on and on and on about things, and sometimes I repeat myself, but I just want to reiterate some points. So yeah, I hope this is helpful to you. Again, if there are any episodes that are helpful to you, feel free to drop a comment, wherever you are. Not all platforms have a comment section, but I will probably see it, or at least try to. So take care, guys, and we will see about the next episode. It'll probably be on a topic I brought up in the past episode again, too. So something I mentioned in 25, nomination events and award events, it'll tie into that, just a heads up. So, yeah. And P.S. guys, yes, so I just went on to Literary Mama's website. I see a July, August, issue posts. So I think, yes, they are back. So I think that was just for January and February. But yeah, it's hard when you come back from a hiatus and break, getting situated into things again. But I love seeing places that, get back up and running and keep things going. It's hard, but again, don't feel bad about needing breaks or saying you need a hiatus, or you don't have to necessarily say hiatus, but I think we just all use that word. But I feel like I should come up with something else, for breaks or something, or we're all going surfing or something, guys, or what? I don't know what to say. I try to come up with something fun to say, or, some people say gone fishing, right? I've seen that. I had a post like that about something when I needed a break from social media or something briefly, but I typically have done some reels with some music and stuff with things like that, and some words. But anyways, yeah, maybe I'll think of something fun for like break messages or something besides just saying break or hiatus. I think there needs to be something fun there, because it's not the end, necessarily for a lit mega journal. It's more than anything, some places you could say, like, I don't know, it's reborn, right? Or I don't know, I was thinking about Yu-Gi-Oh, guys. I don't know, like, how they have like the characters of the cards, right? They come back or something, like, oh yeah, so Monster Reborn, right? Remember that card? That was like a spell card on Yu-Gi or something, and you guys are like, why are you talking about Yu-Gi-Oh on a Lit Mag podcast? But I'm just trying to say, some places come back, right? And they have a new look, or they, it's like a clean slate, right? They start over. Some places start over after a very long break, right? Or some places continue what they have. And I'm mentioning Yu-Gi-Oh because I just want to share with you guys, okay, I don't know, did I mention this on the podcast? I don't think I did. Maybe I mentioned it to some others in the community, but there's this Yu-Gi-Oh card, guys, called Dippity. I grew up collecting all kinds of cards, and that is one card I do not have for sure. The Dippity Yu-Gi-Oh card, guys. It's like one I have to have. Dippity Lit Mag. I mean, I have to have that Yu-Gi-Oh card. I'm going to try and get it one day because I think it's just fitting. By the way, guys, so when you look it up, guys. You got to check it out. If you've ever watched Yu-Gi-Oh or you grew up with that series, I know I'm just sharing some fun stuff here on the podcast, and, don't mind me. But yeah, so let me look up the card again. I want to read what it says for you guys just for fun. So it says, I quote this, "A cute little thing who lives in a glass bottle and is said to bring good luck to the one who makes a contract with it. The lid must never be opened no matter what." So yeah, or no matter what happens. So I think that's kind of, okay, the question I have though, like, how does the cute little thing, like, it's just trapped in there all the time? It looks like almost like a Pokemon character in there. But anyways, it says level 4 light, and yeah. But I feel bad for the cute little thing. I don't know. I feel like, it's I mean, you can't ever let it out, that's kind of messed up. So it's like, it reminds me of like the I Dream of Jeannie series. She's always in the bottle, but she gets to come out, and interact with, and do things. I mean, like, that seems like so painful, look up the card, guys. You'll get what I'm saying. But yeah, that's sad. It's kind of sad though, like it's like in there forever then, the cute little thing, when it's supposed to bring good luck. I don't know. Anyways, it's a Yu-Gi-Oh card I probably should have. Anyways, I grew up collecting those, and Pokemon cards and all kinds of cards. I grew up going to comic shops and getting, baseball cards and all kinds of stuff. I was really was in tune to those series and stuff. Not as much anymore, but I still love comic books and things like that. But I'm not so much a card collectors much. But this is one I would get, come out of my, card collection retirement and get for sure, the Dippity Yu-Gi-Oh card, because I think that's so funny. I'm not sure when that even came out, guys. I don't know. Was that like something, I don't know when they created that. But anyways, I thought that was just so funny because, Dippy Lit Mag and the Dippy Yu-Gi-Oh cards. So, it's one you got to have, guys. Well, I have to, at least. You probably I don't collect Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I don't care. I don't know if you're a fan of Yu-Gi-Oh. Let me know, guys. You don't have to. But yeah, so anyways, so we talked about all kinds of things on this podcast. It's a mashed potato episode, as I call it. Same thing with like number 25 when I tack on additional things and keep going on and on. But yeah, anyways, so we'll talk about nominations, events in the next episode. I'll touch base on that a little bit, if you're curious about what events exist in Lit Mag space. And yeah,